Howdy folks, the topic of this film is Sergeant Mack Trains Ski Troops. Now Sergeant Mack, after his 3 wonderful vacations in Southeast Asia, was assigned the task of training ski troops up in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. And he had several stories that he told about that were quite funny. First of all, his base camp was in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, which is as far north as you can go in Alaska and still have dirt under your feet. He had the guy at the base that warned everybody about how crazy that he was up there training ski troops. And what he said was, when people go to Alaska and they showed up at Prudhoe Bay at his camp, their duffel bags would be empty because they'd be wearing all the clothes that they own, thinking that that would keep them warmer. Well, it doesn't. Basically, what you don't know about living in cold weather in Alaska is that the thing you have to make sure of is that you don't get too warm, because if you ever break a sweat, then you're in trouble. You're going to get hypothermia, then you die. But these folks don't know that. So they show up, they land in the helicopter, and their sergeants get them all lined up in line. They're standing there. In the meantime, Sergeant Mack is inside by the heater. Now, he is wearing combat boots, Green Army underwear, and his hat with his sergeant bars on it. And he has it timed. He knows he's got 1 minute and 30 seconds before he gets frostbite. Now all the troops are lined up in line. They've all been told how crazy he is. And here walks out this guy nearly naked in the snow. And he goes, he talks to their sergeant, he gets his orders, whatever, and he turns around and he looks at the troops and says, "What are you people doing? You don't need all those clothes. Strip!" And the look on their face just falls. They can't believe they've just been ordered in the Arctic to strip. And eventually one of them will get down to his skivvies and the sergeant will grab him and go inside. And eventually, once they see they're going inside, they all strip down. They come in with all their clothes. And he does his first class on teaching survival in the Arctic by dressing properly, which is basically don't overdress. One of the other lessons that he teaches out there is Arctic survival. And what most folks don't know is no matter how cold it is above the snow, 2 feet below the surface, it's about 28, 30, 32 degrees, which is relatively warm most of the year. So what he does is he takes his troops out on a camp out. He trains them on while they're supposed to make a mouse hole, which is basically you burrow down into the snow, you get enough snow over you, you set up your ventilation and whatever, and you spend the night. Now, since he already knows this, when they go out to do this training, they take a tent for him, and he has a tent buried in the snow with a heater. And he said, you know, most folks just went out there, dug down, did their thing. He said one night he woke up because he was snoring. And then he was awake, and he realized he was still hearing snoring. And he went over to the side of his tent, and he pulled it up. One of his troops had tunneled down in the snow and tunneled all the way over right next to his tent and was there sleeping. And had the boy not snored, he'd have got away with it. But Sergeant Mack very carefully reached up, grabbed the snow on top of him, pulled it down, and made him go out and do it again. Now he said every once in a while you get a troop that grew up skiing, was in Colorado or Washington or wherever, grew up in the mountains and knew how to ski. So that guy would usually be at the head of the pack. And he said one day they had a group of soldiers up there and they were skiing down this big run. It started out very wide, and at the very end it gets narrow. It's one lane and you're going through and you got switchbacks and whatever, and then you're done. And he said they had this one kid and he was way out front and he was going, and the rest of them are plodding along. All of a sudden you hear this blood-curdling scream, "Ah!" And it stopped just like that. Well, all the troops pulled up and kind of looked at the sergeant. Sergeant got the bear gun and kind of went up there and looked around the corner and looked around the corner. About the 3rd corner, he found the troop laid out flat in the snow. Skis up, laid out flat. He kind of walks up, says, "Boy, you okay?" And he goes, "Is it gone? Is it gone yet? Is it gone? What's gone? Is it gone? Is it gone yet?" "Boy, just stay there. Calm down." So all the rest of the troops are coming up, and they start looking around, and on the trail, on this side of the trail, they see some footprints, and on this side of the trail, they see some footprints. And what had happened, at about the third turn on this trail, he had come around the corner, and there was a moose straddling the trail. He come up, he hit the side of the moose and slid right under its belly. Well, the moose kind of turned around and said, "What hit it?" "Well, there ain't nothing there," and wandered on. And left this poor kid sitting there crying for his mama, wondering if that moose was going to come kill him or not. But the funniest story that he told about his ski camp was about the cliff behind his base camp. Now, what he started out doing was he would take all of his troops and he'd walk them up here, and he'd make their skis hang over the edge of this cliff. And he said it wasn't a sheer cliff. It was at a real nice angle. He said if you had your foot straight out, your other foot pulled up, and your shoulder, you could slide down it. That's how steep it was. About an 80-degree angle. And he'd take the troops up there and he'd say, "Okay, boys, before you leave this school, you're going to be able to ski this slope." Yada, yada. You know, the typical drill sergeant thing. He never did it, though. Until one time he had some airborne rangers come up for ski troop training. And they went through the whole deal, and every day they'd walk up there, "Before you leave here, you're going to be able to ski this slope." Anyway, on the last day, he got them up there, hung their skis over the edge, and he's getting ready to harangue them and then just dismiss them. And their sergeant said, "Well, boys, I guess it's time." And the whole platoon went over the edge of the cliff. And he was stunned. And his first thought was, how am I going to tell the colonel I just killed a platoon of troops? His second thought was, I better go look over the edge. I don't want to go look over the edge. It's going to be bad. What am I going to tell the colonel? How can I tell the colonel I killed a whole platoon of troops? So he eventually eases up and looks down, and the whole platoon is just a rolling and a spinning and whatever. And they finally all come to a stop, and nobody looks really hurt. And then all of a sudden they look up and they say, "Okay, Sarge, show us how it's done." He's looking over. "I ain't going down this hill, that's stupid." "Crap, I can't walk back." "I ain't going down this hill, that's stupid." "I can't walk back." So finally he found a place, he looked, and he said, "If I go this way, I'll probably not die." So what he did, instead of sliding down like the other ones did, he did a parachute X jump. And he caught everything just right. He landed, he Christies up to him, said, "Okay, that's the way it's done. Get back up there and do it." And they start trudging back up the hill. Finally he looks at his watch and says, "Nah, the choppers are due in here. We're not going to do that anymore." And that was the last time that he took anybody to the top of that cliff and give them the drill sergeant harangue. This is Deacon Parsons saying, love your maker, love your mate, and do what's right because it's right, and devil take the hindmost.